Hey guys, I want to thank you so much for being first listeners to this on the podcast, or if you're watching this live. I want to invite you guys as a thank you to be a guest on the show. So all you need to do is send me an email. The email is guest@investingyourselfpod.com. In the subject, say podcast series guest, and in the body, just say, hey, who you are, what your podcast is, where you're about. Send me 3 episodes you think I'll enjoy listening to, and then I'll reach out to you and we'll schedule a time for you to be on the show. So remember, that's guest@investingyourselfpod.com. And I look forward to listening to your podcast and then learning about you. So without further ado, let's listen into today's show. Boom, ladies and gentlemen, we are back here with Invest in Yourself, the podcast series where I interview podcasters from around the world and learn about their show so that you guys can learn tips from them as well, because they're all successful. Today, I have Mike Forrester, the host of Living Fearless Today podcast, an amazing podcast where men go to be healed and learn to be their true authentic self. Right, Mike?
Yes, definitely, Phil. I appreciate you having me on, allowing me to join you, my friend.
Oh man, it's awesome to have you on the show. So, Mike, I know a little bit about you. We had a great conversation for about like 5, 10, 20 minutes. Really, we're running a little late, but we had a great time joking, laughing. Why don't you introduce yourself to my audience? Let them know a little bit about yourself, and then we'll go into your journey of podcast.
Sounds great. So my name is Mike Forrester. I'm a men's transformation coach doing a podcast, Living Fearless Today. And how that all came about was that I nearly destroyed my marriage, my relationship with my children, and just blew up, my life, period. From the transformation that I went through of healing and getting to the point where I now have a vibrant, like intimate marriage with my wife instead of distant and, just
cold.
Exactly. I mean,
I'll say it to save you. So you never said it. I did.
No, it was. I mean, when your wife doesn't want to hang out with you and just you're being a jerk, that's where it gets you. And my children are now all adults. And so I don't know about you, Phil, but when I was 18, 19, 20, dude, I didn't want to hang around my parents, and my children had all the reason not to want that. But yet, they're 20 to 28. And, for 4 adult children, they come around and hang out. Now, they're not always asking for advice, but, they will ask for advice on some stuff. I don't know about you, man. I was stubborn. I had to learn stuff on my own.
Oh, yeah.
So
I still am. And my dad's just looking at me. He's going, you dumb child. I could have saved you a headache. You could have just asked. So yeah, I'm still in the stubborn mode. No matter how old I get, I think I still will.
I feel you, man. So I'm in a different place now. My goal is to hold up other men who have gone through the same kind of stuff that are now in a place of success and health, that have, gone through the journey of, whether it's health, mental, emotional, physical, whatever the case may be, because we often feel so isolated with where we're at and we think nobody else is going to get it. And that's the biggest lie that we believe. And so just getting out a message of there's hope, there's help, you can do this. So that's in a nutshell what I do and why I do it.
Oh, I love it. So you're 53 episodes into your Living Fearless Today podcast.
Well, let's actually be accurate on that. Okay. It's number 53.
It's number 53.
But I think it's like 30 episodes.
Okay.
And I mean, I'm just going to be honest here, because if somebody's stepping into podcast or on their podcast journey, look, I shut down my voice because I gave somebody else that permission. I put out some Facebook ads to gain visibility, and I got back laughter from other men. And so that goes back to where in my past, like, being told you're a mistake, you're never going to amount. That stuff came back to show up with that ad, and I shut down my voice. Now I'm going back and I'm sharing that message of, hey, this is where I was, this is what I went through, to be vulnerable and to be open about this stuff. But, just so that when we're recording this, Phil, I'm probably at about episode 30. So I've got 20 in there to make up.
But it's fine.
So,
It's fine. You'll definitely do it.
yes.
Yeah, I've been jumping around listening to some of your previous episodes. They're great. It's nice hearing that there's other guys who have had similar things. Like I'm very open about my burnout on this podcast and my other podcasts that I had last year in 2020. But it helped me come to this road where I am today. Like if it wasn't for that burnout, I would never have created my second podcast, which led to me developing my own network of podcasts, connecting with these amazing podcasters and making a living from podcasting. Like so, like there's this nice hearing that there's other people who are just as successful who've had these issues, like we have the previous guys, but like we don't know about the problems that Henry Ford had because it's his life is glamorized, or the Rockefellers or this because no one talks about it because they're these icons now.
Yeah.
But here we're learning that even the icons, because we're having these, not revisionist history, just like a fuller history coming out, and we're learning that hey, it's okay that your idols have these faults because it just makes them more human. And it's nice seeing people who are successful today doing the same thing.
Well, and it gives us hope. I mean, like, how trusting or how realistic does it feel that you're going to achieve something if you don't see that somebody struggles and falters along the way? I mean, that for me is like a credibility mark, Okay, yeah, you're walking outside of your comfort zone, trying something that you're not sure of. It's not just a goal, but that's a dream. That's something you're aspiring to get to that, caused you to stumble. Okay, cool. Let's run. And it makes it feel like it's more accessible, it's real life,
Yeah,
it,
it grounds it and it shows that it is possible.
absolutely. I mean, how confident do you feel like, hey, I can raise my kids, in a successful way if you're getting advice from somebody who's never had their kids argue with them? It's like, okay, I was just in an argument with my kids 5 minutes ago, and now I'm trying to relate to you and take advice from you. It's like, then the advice may be accurate, but the advice then comes under question because it's like, well, you're in this higher level and you're not subjected to what I'm going through. So will it apply and actually work with where I'm at? It's the same thing with podcasting or anything we're going after that's, like an aspiration, a dream. So it's seeing people that have stumbled and struggled. And to me, that just makes it, more attainable and authentic because on the way.
There we go with that. Authentic is the word I was looking for. It makes it more real, like authentic. You can trust it. It's like mom's apple pie or something. You're like something credible, like you believe it. Like when you eat your mom's warm apple pie, like this is delicious. This feels like home. This is safe. And when you see that authenticity in someone else, you're like, okay, like I can trust this person. This person is showing me that yeah, I'm vulnerable. I'm not Superman or I'm not Superwoman. In
Yeah.
some cases, it's I'm here, so I like it. It's awesome. So, what was your why? Like, what was the real reason you started? Like, I want to go back to the original question before we parlay it into more of understanding of your podcast. What was the why? Like, what was the 100? Like, why did you start your podcast?
It was honestly one of those of I needed to stretch myself. So understand that part of my past was if I failed, I was taught that I was a failure. And so I'm still working to leave that thought pattern behind, to step into life, fully, right? To engage, take the chance and put myself out there. Well, that came from a perfectionistic belief, right? And so it was this podcast, it needs to be X, Y, and Z, it needs to be perfect. Dude, I launched messy. it was not where I wanted it to
Everyone
be.
launches messy. I love it. Everybody's like, "Oh, it's going to be the perfect launch ever." Then you listen back like 100 episodes in, you're like, "Oh my god, I'm an idiot." Like I've launched dozens of podcasts, and I still cringe every single first
Yeah.
episode when I listen back. I'm like, "Oh my god, that was horrible. What was I thinking? What was that voice?"
Right. Well, and that was the funny thing, man. I've been an IT consultant, worked for myself, my own company and everything, been in IT for 20 plus years before stepping into coaching men. And so the thing was, I stepped into the podcast speaking like I was in a C-suite meeting, with management and everything. I'm like, wow, this is really rigid. That's not me. but but I had to become comfortable in my own skin. And fortunately, I had friends and people I knew that they were understanding about it, and they were the easiest ones to approach about it and just go, look, this is where I'm at. This is what I want to do. Can you believe in the vision down the road? And they jumped in wholeheartedly and said, yeah, let's go. And I look back at them and I'm like, oh my gosh, that must have been so challenging on the other side of the microphone. but but I appreciate that time because it was growing me. It's helping me figure out, what do I want the podcast to be like? Who do I want to be when I'm coming through? Do I want to be this IT consultant and really rigid? It's like, no, that's not me. So it's a growth process, and none of us jumped on a bicycle and nailed it right out of the gates. Why are we expecting to nail podcasting right out of the gates and never change? It's unrealistic. And so just be gracious to yourself. Step in, start the movement, and grow along the way. I mean, otherwise you just have a great idea and it never gets heard. It's never brought to light because perfection is unobtainable. And so let it out there. Grow with it. People will understand.
I love that. You like I ask you for your why. You give me your why and a tip at the same time. Just get it out there. Like, my God, this episode is going to be like just golden nuggets with Mike. That's all it's going to be. Like, don't worry about Phil. Phil's not important in this episode. You're just like,
I mean, think about it, Phil. It's like, what did we expect for ourselves? Right? It was unrealistic. And it's like, what you're wanting to do here is to encourage that person that's either just, right off the edge of the curb from acting, or that they're just starting on their journey. And in how many of us, don't continue on past that? They step into pod fade and they get to maybe 10, 12 episodes and stop. It's like, man, you've got a voice. You took a chance. Keep going. And it's just hearing that voice, like what you're doing, and you're bringing other people alongside you to say, you can do this. It's worth it. Dude, I mean, I want to be like a small piece of what you're presenting. So I appreciate you letting me come and share my stumbles and learning experiences. So thank you.
oh no, I love it. And at the same time, like I was like thinking like what is a pain point that you may have had and you succeeded in conquering? And I'm like, you're rigid IT. I'm like, okay, well, that question is done. Jesus, Mike, I can't even ask any more questions here. You're killing it with the answers. But I will want to know, like, in your growth of your podcast, you're being using Captivate.
Yes.
Uh and I've been only hearing great things coming out of the Captivate thing because I'm subscribed to their newsletter because when you're in the podcasting world, you need to stay abreast of what's going on in with different companies and that. And I'm loving what they're doing. How has your experience with Captivate been? Because a lot of people when they start out, they're like, "What's the best hosting platform?" So I want to know. I've never used Captivate. I've started with Lisbon, went to podcast.co, and now I'm with Bcast because Bcast provides me with the best for my business use. So Captivate, I'm only hearing good things. What has your experience been with Captivate?
Well, and so understand, man, I'm an IT guy. What do you think I'm going to go after? I'm going to go after data. I'm the nerd. So it was like, I talked to some folks inside of Clubhouse, Tanner being one of them, and he was just like, look, here's 3 options for you that I think would go well. And I checked into them, and Captivate was the one I went with. Now, interesting thing is, dude, just like I talked about us not being perfect, there isn't a perfect, like hosting provider.
Yeah.
I had some struggles when I got on Captivate because they were expanding into a data center, and some of my shows were having problems being, retained. And so you might go to my link and it'd be like, hey, this one's not available on Apple. I'm like, oh, just having this coronary. But it's like, I had to step back and go, okay, great. What can we do? And I worked with them, and dude, their customer service was awesome. So I love what Mark is doing. He he's the, I think, CEO or founder. I'm sorry,
Yeah,
I don't know his title.
I think it's both. I think he's both. I know he's the founder. I'm pretty sure he's the founder. He's at least the spokesman.
Yes.
He's the spokesman. We can go with that.
So and Mark, if I pronounce your name wrong, I apologize. But I think it's Mark Asquith. And dude, I've watched him inside of Facebook groups, just encouraging people, even when they're not on his platform. To me, that was huge, where it's like, hey, you're not just helping your own tribe, but you're looking at the podcasting community and how do you elevate people in there to succeed. To me, that spoke volumes. So that was like the other selling point, why I went with them. They keep just growing things and adding it in. Like they just added a booking
Yeah,
feature.
oh my God, that looks beautiful.
Yeah,
I'm a
they've
little
got another
jealous.
one coming up on
Yeah,
Friday.
so so for people who are listening, we're recording on the 26th of October. On the 29th, they're talking about dynamic ad insertion, if I'm not mistaken, or
Yeah,
ACEM
AIME
or something like
something.
that. Ad insertion. So if you're not into the podcasting, like, oh my God, this is amazing nerdism that I am, and obviously Mike is because he's in IT, but this allows you to insert specific ads, different parts of your podcast. And
And if I understand it correctly, it's also one where, let's say I have an event that's going on now, like in October, or well, let's even say November. We get to January, I want to advertise for my upcoming event in March. If I'm understanding it correctly, I can dynamically update it in that process.
so
If
there's
I
no more.
understand it correctly.
That means like this is for anybody who has sponsors or anything like that. You can now not have a permanent ad in your video in your podcast.
If I'm understanding it correctly, I'm like,
If this is
don't.
if we're not going to quote, but because I know Bcast has pre and post, like you can
Okay.
do a pre and post ad insertion, no problem. But if this is dynamic, I can insert a 60-second or something in the middle. That would be insane.
Yeah, I mean
That would
that
be
just simplifies everything for you. And
yeah.
that's what I really like is it's like the sustainability and your success in the process is what, I feel like Captivate is focused on. Just it's the culture of their company. It's not just Mark being the face of it, but that's actually how they're working things out, is to make it more automated, more accessible, to streamline the process for us. Because it's like you're going to have other stuff around your podcast, to finance.
Mhm.
And so it's one of those of, how do we make it easy and how do we give you more time to focus on your business? I love that aspect because it's not created in a vacuum where it's like, here you go, done, walk away. So
Yeah, they're looking at not only because there's like I find there's two types of podcasters. You have the indie podcasters who are doing it kind of like the passion. It's more passion. Like
mhm.
they're like, I'll grow my brand and then I'll make money. Then there's the business people who are looking at podcasting. And they're like, this is a very easy way to make money.
Yeah, it's
Because
a longer term game, but it's there.
yeah, like it's long term, like renewable content that's always here that you can always use for clients and stuff like that. Like you have this podcast, it's here forever. Someone searches Mike Forrester, this episode's going to pop up, and then they listen to it and they're like, oh my God, this is great. They go listen to your stuff, and then they fall into your funnel, your sales funnel, if you've created your sales funnel properly.
Yeah.
So for us, I look at it, I'm like, okay, Captivate is doing a lot of stuff that helps more the indie podcaster because
Mm,
the indie podcaster may not have the business sense, how to run a business, and people are running podcasts like a business, so they have all the funnels behind it. That's what the business people are doing. This is like, this is how we make so much money, you know. This is easy. And then the indies are like, how are you making money? And then Captivate is like doing it for them. I'm like, look, get sponsorship, boom, here's how you
yeah.
do a simple, like they're going and asking, like Mark's in those groups and asking and seeing the pain points and just going, okay, we need to make this, boom,
Yeah.
insert it into it, so more people come, because they're like, oh, it's a one-stop shop. I find Captivate's going to probably be the one-stop shop for more indie podcasters
Hmm.
than business podcasters. But business podcasters like, oh, this is like a CRM for me, great, let's use it.
Yeah. And I mean, that's the thing. It provides flexibility. Like you don't have to take care, like use all the features, but I love the fact it's there and it's not like, hey, here's another upsell and another upsell. It's like, nope, just here you go. So
As
it's
long as
very
you're at this package, you get everything that we come with.
yeah, as long as it's $500 a month,
Yeah.
there's some places that are like that. It's like, thank you, no. So Mark just puts it out there on a playing field, and I mean, I'm not at a high tier package. I'm just like, okay, this fits, let's go, and it's
Yeah.
all accessible. So I love that.
Yeah, no, I have a few of my other friends on Captivate, and they've been positive about it. The
Yeah,
only reason I'm with BCast is because of that agency deal I got, which means I have like unlimited powers. So it's like, well, it's okay. I would really love that, and oh, that looks nice, but
yeah.
paying monthly to one shot payment, I don't know. I don't think I'm gonna. That's where it is. It's like it's just a money saver every month for me. So
And that's the cool thing is it's like, you and I are talking about being on different platforms. It's like look to see what fits your needs,
yeah.
your budget, like where you're hearing good stuff, and go for it. It's not like, oh my gosh, I have to go with this one.
Yeah.
There's different flavors out there, man. Just go to the ice cream store, i.e.
Yeah, it's
podcast platforms, and pick a flavor.
yeah. And so we were way before we started recording, we're like talking about how we have to be like everywhere, because I was having issues with one of my shows not showing up on Apple, and I have to deal with Apple. That's why I like Spotify is so much easier. But it's which platform, like, so which, because you have the hosting platform, because like people who
Hmm.
start podcasting don't understand, like there's like levels on levels. You have the hosting platform, then you have your booking platform, then you can have this, but Captivate kind of takes care of all that. But then you have the podcatchers, quote unquote, which has been named. No one in the real world calls them that, but in the podcasting world, that's what they're called. But it's like Apple, Google, Spotify, and Amazon. And then you have
Hmm.
all the sub ones that are like thousands trying to be made and make money off it. And it's like it's never going to happen.
Yeah.
Do you see a platform kind of like YouTube coming out that gives a more kind of like for podcasters, like just aggregates all the big guys downloads so that you can see a better understanding? Or do you see it still staying kind of like a rebel music, kind of like the pirate radios of old?
Well, I mean, if you look at it, like Spotify seems to be catching up in the market share as far as from Apple. Apple's
Mhm.
still the primary one, but it's a lot more challenging to try and search for what you're looking for
Yeah.
on their platform. There is still space, I think, for somebody to come in and collectively make it easier. Just like, we what did we start out with? Internet Explorer, right? And
Mhm.
now we're off to Google. Well, that's because Google made a better web browser, right? They
Yeah.
now if you're looking for something, you go, just go Google it. I mean, it's
Yeah.
become a term. So there's still space for somebody to come onto the market and do that. And I think you're seeing that play out where you've got different podcast, centric platforms that are there, but it's them getting enough like visibility, catching enough audience, to go in that direction. For me, I'm actually getting ready to put my stuff out on YouTube because of the SEO aspect, because of the
Yeah.
searchability. There's so many different ways to skin a cat. I mean, just with your podcast, I'm playing. So understand, I don't have this figured out, but I'm even playing on Pinterest where it's like, hey, take my thumbnail, put it in this format, use some keywords. I mean, there's so many different ways to go about it. If you wanted to go down the rabbit hole and be like Alice, you will find the Cheshire Cat of podcasting somewhere along that path. But yeah, I think there's lots of different ways to put it out there, and just do what fits your time and what you have available. And I think there's still room for somebody to come out with something that's, you know, like the YouTube of podcasting. So
Yeah, because it
um,
has to be easy for the everyday person, you know, so
mhm,
that it's like when you go to YouTube, it's like, oh, cool, this is easy for me to search something, find something, and I can actually see some stats about the person I'm following, right? Which is
right.
like people love seeing that because you can go into some podcasting groups, and this is mainly a podcaster problem, not a everyday person problem. But you have some podcasters going, oh, I got 15,000 downloads or 10 billion downloads, and you're like, but you're not charting on Apple anywhere. But with like something like YouTube, which shows that, like, look, this is the numbers you have. But then on the back end, it's also very friendly to podcasters to use to upload, and gives me all this data so that I can know, okay, my like retention of audience, like, is
Mhm.
only getting here. Why is it dropping off here? Listen to the episodes. Okay, this is at this point, there's a bad ad, or it's not a good ad insertion point. I should be playing it over here, or something like that.
Yeah.
Like giving the robustness that, that some podcasters need, or like we need as creators. Like we're the most underserved creators in this, I think, in the space, because
Yeah.
YouTube.
And you've got like sites like Chartable that'll help you kind of see where you're ranking even outside of, like the 200 that Apple would show you.
Yeah.
So there's stuff that you can piecemeal together, but yeah, there's nothing cohesive where it's really giving you that information back. But I think that may be part of the way it's accessed right now,
Mhm.
is that there's nothing that's really uniform. Like we're on the internet. You can see searches when they go to a certain website. And I think with having these different podcast hosting platforms, as far as like, hey, I'm over on Apple, I'm on Spotify, there may be some loss of visibility that the data that's reported back may not be fully accurate. Now, I haven't been doing this but for 5 months, so I'm still learning my way around. I'll defer to you on that kind of stuff, Phil. But it seems like maybe the collection of it is a little bit kind of, you know, scattered, so to speak.
Yeah. I've been thinking, because I've been thinking about it, and I'm like, the hardest thing for a podcaster is like, I have to go into like five different platforms just to get my stats. I have to go to
Hmm.
Apple, I have to go to Google, then I have to go to Spotify, then I have to go to Amazon, then I have to go to YouTube, because YouTube has its own stats as well, and check that out. And then it's like, okay, and then it's like, that's just a whole like rigmarole, because you have to remember the passwords and the but if it was like in one center, just one place, that's all I'm asking for, YouTube, the internet gods, just one place that just congregates all my data. Because the hosting, you can't really trust your hosting all the time, because you don't
Yeah,
know if it's bots or not downloading it, because they could just grab the RSS feed and boom. Oh, look, you
right.
have 10,000 downloads. And you're like, okay, but where are they coming from?
Yeah, and I mean, that's the cool thing about Captivate. Like I said, I'm a nerd, so they'll show like, here's the different platforms that it's come from. Here's the different browsers that it's gone through. So it'll give additional data, but yeah, there's still gaps where it's like I'd love to see more, and I think there's kind of disparaging information as far as it's not all collected and pulled in. So.
I would also like to know if, like, if someone's grabs your podcast, let's say on Apple,
Mhm.
does Apple go every single time to your RSS feed, or do they just have this one downloaded copy that they just send out to everybody? Like, that's, I'm interested to know as well, because that could
Yeah.
also change your downloads, because if Apple isn't coming every single time to deliver the RSS feed, and they're only doing it once, and you'll be like, but what?
Yeah, on that part, I don't know.
So many
Um,
questions, so many
I've gotten to
questions.
the point. So for me, like my default is to just say, go to this URL, which is on my website, and tell people to go there, because it's like, I know that it's a one place to go to, and it's easy to just give that URL rather than apple.podcast.com/gobbledygook,
Yeah.
a cryptic
just
URL.
or trying to search it on Apple's podcast, like
Yeah.
we had some issues trying to find mine because it. Anyways, yeah, updating things like that.
Yeah.
Mike, we're coming up to the end here. I'm having so much fun talking, but this is a podcast to let you also promote your own podcast, so that if anybody wants to follow along, if they've enjoyed the conversation about learning your journey of podcasting, they can listen more to your podcast. So give me a second here. I'm going to throw you up. Let us know where we can find you and follow you and all that fun stuff.
Okay. Awesome. So like I said, podcast is called Living Fearless Today, and you can find it at livingfearlesstodaypodcast.com. If you want to find me on social media, you can find me as Hi, as in hello, so HI, and then Coach Mike is the, so it's Hi Coach Mike. You can find me on any of the platforms, primarily on Instagram and Facebook. So, and if you want to reach out to me directly, you can just reach me at hicoachmike.com. So look forward to speaking with you.
There we go, Mike. Living Fearless Today, the awesome podcast. I highly suggest you guys listen to it. I mess up podcast names every time. I hate it because it's like, oh, you're not professional. Yes, I am. I'm sorry. I talk too fast.
We're human.
Yeah, we're human. Exactly. Being human with Mike. That I think that may be the episode title. Maybe not. Don't know. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Invest in Yourself, the podcast series where we talk with podcasters, learn about them, and join to grow as well. I am, of course, Phil Better, the podcast mogul. He's Mike Forrester. I thank you very much for listening. And remember, ladies and gentlemen, to always invest in yourself. Hey, everybody. I want to thank you so much for watching the show and listening to the podcast. As a thank you, remember, you can always head over to my website, philbetterinc.com, and get free 15 minutes with me to talk about how you can grow your podcast, how to monetize your podcast, or even how to start your podcast. I have helped lots of people, and I want to help you do the same for your business or just for your personal brand. So again, that is philbetterinc.com. Head over there, book your free 15 minutes, and I'll be a pleasure to help you out. Have a good night, and remember to invest in yourself.